I was pouring my morning coffee when I heard the sentence that changed the rest of my life. David, I just need peace and quiet for myself and the baby. Your mother has to move out. The words floated from the living room, crisp, entitled, and completely serious. I didn't drop my favorite ceramic mug. I didn't burst into tears or gasp in shock. I simply took a slow sip of my dark roast, walked right into the living room, and looked my daughter-in-law, Harper, dead in the eye. Honey, I smiled, keeping my voice perfectly level. This is my house. Harper froze, her hands resting on her slightly rounded belly. David, my 32-year-old son, stared at his shoes. He had always avoided conflict, choosing the path of least resistance. Since he married Harper 2 years ago, that path usually meant agreeing with whatever she demanded. They had moved in with me 6 months ago to save for a down payment before the baby arrived. I welcomed them into my 4-bedroom home in the suburbs, a house my late husband and I paid off a decade ago. But lately, Harper had started acting like she was the landlord and I was the annoying tenant. She complained about the volume of my television. She sighed loudly when I cooked meals with spices she suddenly couldn't stand. And now, she was actively plotting my eviction. Georgia, it's just that a newborn requires a lot of space. Harper recovered quickly, trying to sound reasonable. We need the environment to be totally stress-free. It's best for the baby. I agree. I nodded. A stress-free environment is very important, but my name is on the mailbox, the utility bills, and the property tax. I won't be going anywhere. I turned and walked back to the kitchen to finish my breakfast. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to yell. But as I sat down at my kitchen table, I knew one thing for sure. The grace period of their stay had just expired. If Harper wanted to play house, she was going to learn what running a house actually cost. For the first few months, I tried to be the helpful mother. I bought the groceries, paid the utilities, and covered the premium cable and high-speed internet package. Harper worked part-time from home, which mostly consisted of streaming movies and browsing expensive baby clothes online. David's salary was supposedly going straight into their savings account. After the morning, she tried to evict me. I realized I was funding my own disrespect. That afternoon, while Harper was out getting a manicure, I made a few phone calls. I downgraded the internet to a basic package, just enough for me to read my emails and check the news. I canceled the premium cable entirely. Then, I logged into my bank account and canceled the automatic transfer that paid for David's car insurance, a habit I had kept since his college days. When Harper came home, she immediately went to the living room to turn on her favorite reality show. The screen stayed blank. Georgia, she called out, frustration lacing her tone. The Wi-Fi is down and the TV isn't working. I walked out of my study, holding a book. Oh, I canceled the premium packages, I replied casually. I only need basic internet, and I never watch those channels. It didn't make financial sense to keep paying for them. Harper's jaw tightened. But I need the high-speed internet for work, and I watch those channels. Then you should probably set up an account in your name. I smiled. The router is in the hallway. Let me know when your installation guy is coming so I can unlock the door for him. David came home an hour later, looking stressed. Harper immediately cornered him, complaining about the internet. He looked at me, rubbing the back of his neck. Mom, come on. We're trying to save money here. So am I. David, I answered, returning to my book. By the way, your auto insurance is due next week. Make sure you update the billing to your own credit card. He blinked, suddenly realizing the free ride was over. I didn't say another word. I just turned the page. Harper had a very specific diet. She only ate organic, gluten-free, locally sourced foods, which I had been purchasing every Sunday to keep the peace. My grocery bills had tripled since they moved in. If I bought regular strawberries instead of the organic ones, she would leave them to rot on the counter with a sticky note that read, "Not safe for the baby." The Sunday following the Wi-Fi incident, I went to the store alone. I bought exactly what I like to eat: regular milk, standard produce, my favorite cut of steak, and a few bottles of nice wine. I also bought a heavy-duty padlock. When I got home, I cleared out a large cabinet in the kitchen. I put all my non-perishables, my favorite snacks, and my expensive coffee inside. Then, I attached the latch and snapped the padlock shut. Monday morning, Harper walked into the kitchen, opening the fridge. She stared at the shelves, pulling jars out and putting them back. "Where is the almond milk?" she asked, frowning. "And the organic avocado spread?" "I didn't buy them," I replied, sipping my standard, delicious coffee. "Why not? You know that's what I eat for breakfast." "I decided to separate our groceries," I explained smoothly. "Since we have different tastes, it makes more sense for you and David to handle your own food. I've cleared 2 shelves in the fridge for you, and the left pantry is all yours." She stared at the locked cabinet. "Did you lock up the coffee?" "I did." I nodded. "Those beans are expensive, and I noticed they were disappearing quite fast. I'm sure David can pick up some groceries for you after work." Harper crossed her arms, her face flushing red. "You are being incredibly petty." "Georgia, I'm pregnant." "You are pregnant." "Harper, not helpless," I corrected gently. "David is fully capable of providing for his growing family. It's time he starts practicing." I rinsed my mug in the sink, dried my hands, and walked out to the garden. I left her standing there, staring at an empty fridge, finally realizing she had bitten the hand that fed her. If there was one thing I loved about my house, it was the temperature. I kept it at a comfortable 72 degrees. Harper, however, insisted that her pregnancy made her constantly overheat. She would turn the AC down to 65 degrees, leaving me shivering in my own living room while she walked around in shorts. I had politely asked her to use a fan in her bedroom, but she ignored me. "The doctor says I need to stay cool," she claimed, though I highly doubted a doctor prescribed freezing out her mother-in-law. One afternoon, the house felt like an icebox. I walked to the hallway thermostat and found it set to 64 degrees. I didn't argue, I didn't complain. I simply drove to the hardware store and bought a clear, locking thermostat cover. It took me 10 minutes with a screwdriver to install it over the dial. I set the temperature back to a comfortable 72 degrees, snapped the plastic cover shut, and put the only key on my personal keychain. Harper noticed an hour later. I heard the plastic clicking as she tried to force it open. "Georgia!" she shouted from the hallway. I stepped out of my room, holding a basket of laundry. "Is there a problem?" I asked. "Why is there a lock on the thermostat?" she demanded, pointing at the wall. "I'm sweating. I need to turn the air down." "The electric bill was $300 last month," I answered calmly. "I'm the one paying it. So I control the temperature. 72 degrees is a perfectly reasonable climate." "I need it colder," she insisted. "Then I suggest you buy a portable air conditioner for your bedroom." I smiled. "Just make sure David gives me the money for the extra electricity it will use." David tried to intervene that evening. asking for a spare key to the lockbox. I looked him dead in the eye and refused. Your name isn't on the utility bill. David, when you pay for the cold air, you can control the cold air. He didn't ask again. The house stayed at 72 degrees, and Harper had to start wearing lighter shirts. The tension in the house was thickening, but I refused to let it disrupt my routine. I kept to my schedule, tended my garden, and slept peacefully in my primary bedroom on the ground floor. My bedroom had a large ensuite bathroom, walk-in closets, and French doors leading to the patio. Harper and David were staying in one of the upstairs guest rooms. It was a nice room, but apparently, it wasn't nice enough. I came home from a morning walk to find Harper standing in my bedroom. She had a tape measure in her hand and was writing numbers down in a small notebook. "Can I help you?" I asked, leaning against the door frame. She jumped, startled, but quickly recovered her arrogant posture. I was just measuring for the crib. David and I decided this room makes the most sense for the nursery. It has better light, and the ensuite will be perfect for bathing the baby. We're going to move you upstairs. I stared at her, genuinely amazed by her audacity. She wasn't asking. She was informing me. Put the tape measure away. Harper, I instructed softly. Georgia, be reasonable. The stairs are going to be too hard for me once the baby comes. You don't need all this space just for yourself. I need exactly the space I earned by paying the mortgage for 30 years, I replied, stepping into the room and opening my door wide. You will not be taking my bedroom. You will not be moving my furniture. If the upstairs is too difficult for you, I suggest you and David look for a ground floor apartment. David already agreed it was a good idea, she challenged, lifting her chin. David doesn't own this house, I reminded her, as soon as she stormed out. I called a locksmith. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, I had a heavy-duty deadbolt installed on my bedroom door. When I left the house, my room was locked. When I slept, it was locked. No one was going to measure my life away while I wasn't looking. Before the eviction threat, I had fallen into the habit of doing their laundry. It started innocently. I was doing a load of towels and threw David's shirts in. Soon, Harper began leaving baskets of her dirty clothes outside my laundry room door. I also cooked dinner 4 nights a week, setting the table and doing the dishes while they relaxed on the sofa. No more. On a Tuesday evening, David and Harper came down to the kitchen right at 6 o'clock, expecting dinner. They found the kitchen spotless, the stove cold, and me sitting at the island eating a perfectly seared salmon fillet from a single plate. "Where's dinner?" David asked, looking confused. "On my plate," I answered, taking a bite. I decided to scale back. Cooking for 3 every night is exhausting. You guys are adults. I know you can manage your own meals. Harper scoffed. You could have warned us? We don't have anything prepped. There's a pizza place down the street. I smiled. The next morning, Harper left a large laundry basket overflowing with clothes right in the middle of the hallway outside my door. It was a silent demand. I didn't move it. I simply stepped over it on my way to the kitchen. When she came downstairs hours later, she tripped over her own basket. "Why didn't you put this in the wash?" she snapped. "I have no clean yoga pants." "Because it's your laundry." "Harper," I replied, watering my indoor plants. "The washing machine is free. Feel free to use it. Just make sure you provide your own detergent." I took mine into my bedroom. She stared at me, disbelief washing over her face. For months, she had treated me like the hired help in my own home. Now that the free labor was gone, she was realizing exactly how much effort it took to maintain a household. I didn't argue with her complaints. I just kept watering my plants. Boundaries are quiet things, but they are incredibly heavy when someone tries to push against them. Harper decided to host a baby shower on a Saturday afternoon. She didn't ask me if she could use the house. She simply informed David, who awkwardly passed the message to me. I had errands to run anyway, so I didn't mind. However, I finished my shopping early and returned home around 2 in the afternoon. The driveway was full of cars. I walked through the front door and heard the chatter of a dozen young women in my living room. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed something strange. The hallway walls looked bare. My family photos, pictures of my late husband, David's graduation, our vacations were gone. I stepped into the living room. Harper had replaced all my framed photos on the mantel with ultrasound pictures and styled maternity shots of herself. My wedding photo had been shoved onto a low bookshelf behind a stack of gift boxes. Harper saw me and her smile faltered. "Oh, Georgia, we didn't expect you back so soon." "I can see that," I replied calmly. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't shout or cry in front of her friends. I simply walked over to the bookshelf, picked up my wedding photo, and walked to the mantel. I gently nudged one of her maternity frames aside and placed my husband's face right back in the center of the room. "I prefer my husband where I can see him." I smiled at the silent room of guests. "Enjoy the cake, ladies. It's a lovely afternoon." I walked through the kitchen, retrieved the rest of my family photos from the cardboard box she had hidden them in, and methodically hung them back on the hallway walls, right where they belonged. Every hammer tap echoed through the house, a quiet rhythm of reclamation. Harper didn't come out to stop me. Her friends left shortly after. When the house was quiet, I went to my locked bedroom, leaving Harper to clean up the mess of wrapping paper and cake plates entirely on her own. The atmosphere in the house finally hit a boiling point. The free ride was over. The maid service was terminated, and Harper's control over my space was gone. She was furious, and she finally aimed that fury directly at David. I was sitting on the back patio reading the newspaper when they marched outside. Harper had her arms crossed tightly, and David looked miserable. "Mom, we need to talk," David said, standing awkwardly near the patio table. "I'm listening," I replied, folding the paper and placing it on my lap. Harper stepped forward, unwilling to let David handle it. "This arrangement isn't working anymore. Georgia, you are making my pregnancy miserable. You lock up the food, you freeze me out of the thermostat, and you embarrass me in front of my friends. We can't live like this." "I completely agree." I nodded smoothly. "It's very stressful for everyone, so you need to leave." Harper pushed, her entitlement flaring. "Go stay with your sister in Florida or rent a condo. If you don't leave by the end of the month, we will—" She crossed her arms harder, looking triumphant. It was a classic bluff. She expected me to cave, to beg my only son to stay, to surrender my home to keep them close. She had vastly underestimated me. I stood up, walked back inside the house, and went to the hall closet. I pulled out 3 flattened cardboard moving boxes. I walked back out to the patio and handed them directly to Harper. "What is this?" she asked, dropping her arms. "Moving boxes." I smiled warmly. "I have plenty more in the garage. I expect the keys left on the kitchen counter on the 31st. Let me know if you need help packing the heavy stuff." David's face drained of color. "Mom, wait." She didn't mean, she meant exactly what she said. "David," I interrupted gently. "And I think it's a wonderful idea. It's time you two got your own place. The peace and quiet will be lovely." The panic set in almost immediately after I handed them the boxes. For the next 2 days, I heard hushed, panicked arguments filtering through the ceiling from their upstairs bedroom. They had thought living with me was a permanent, rent-free solution. But because Harper had insisted on eating expensive takeout, buying designer baby clothes, and living above their means, they had practically nothing saved. They couldn't afford a down payment on a house. They could barely afford the deposit on a standard apartment. David came to me on a Wednesday evening, looking defeated. "Mom, we looked at places today. Rent is crazy right now. We don't have enough for first, last, and security deposit." "That's a tough situation," I replied, wiping down the kitchen counters. "Can we just stay?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. "We'll follow your rules. Harper won't complain. We just need more time." I looked at my son. I loved him, but I loved him enough to know that rescuing him would only prolong his misery. He needed to stand on his own 2 feet, away from the cushion of my house and the demands of his wife. "No, David," I said softly but firmly. "You made a choice. Harper issued an ultimatum, and I accepted it. I will not be a hostage in my own home. You have until the 31st. "Mom, please. I am not kicking you to the curb today," I reminded him. "I'm giving you exactly what Harper asked for. You have 3 weeks. Figure it out. Sell some of the luxury baby items if you need cash. Downgrade your car. Act like a father preparing for his child." He realized my boundary was an absolute brick wall. 2 weeks later, a moving truck pulled up to the driveway. They had found a small, 2-bedroom apartment across town. It wasn't the luxury home Harper envisioned, but it was what they could afford. I watched quietly from the porch as David loaded the truck. Harper didn't say goodbye. I simply waved as they drove away. The first morning I woke up in an empty house was glorious. There were no heavy footsteps upstairs. There was no passive-aggressive sighing in the kitchen. I walked to the thermostat and smiled at the glowing 72 degrees. I unlocked the pantry and threw the padlock in the trash. I brewed my expensive coffee, opened all the windows to let the spring breeze in, and sat at my kitchen table in absolute silence. It has been 6 months since they moved out. The baby was born healthy. I visit them occasionally, always calling first, and I never stay longer than an hour. Harper is too exhausted by the reality of managing her own household to pick fights with me anymore. Without my financial cushion, she had to return to work sooner than she planned. David stopped by last week to drop off a new picture of my granddaughter. He knocked on the front door, waited for me to answer, and wiped his shoes on the mat before entering. "The house looks great. Mom," he said quietly, looking at my family photos perfectly aligned on the hallway wall. "It feels great." "David." I smiled, pouring him a cup of coffee. We had a nice, polite conversation. When he left, I locked the door behind him. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to argue. And I certainly didn't need to move out of the home I built. I just needed to remember that my peace was worth fighting for. And sometimes, the best way to fight is to simply close your wallet and open a cardboard box. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to set a hard boundary with family in your own home, tell me how you handled it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, never let anyone make you a guest in your own life. See you next time.